She stole my pool key over a chair, so I gave her 10,000 reasons to regret it. HOA Karen stole my pool key, so I filled it with 10,000 piranhas. Part 1. The porch, the mug, and the march of madness. That morning felt normal. I was on my porch sipping lukewarm coffee from a mug that proudly read, "World's Okayest Grandpa." While Margaret the cat judged everything from her spot on the railing. The breeze was soft. The birds were chirping. Life was good. Then, I saw her. Karen Wills. Storming down the sidewalk like she was leading a military parade. Clipboard clenched tight, fanny pack flapping, and that look. Oh, that look. The kind that screamed, "Someone's about to get fined." My stomach sank. Because I knew that look. That was the face of tyranny. See, I've lived in Ashford Pines for 33 years. Raised kids, retired, grew roses and watered every inch of my lawn like it was sacred. But nothing. Nothing had tested my patience like Karen Wills and her HOA dictatorship. She didn't enforce rules. She weaponized them. From banning pink flamingos to issuing mailbox citations, this woman turned our neighborhood into a bureaucratic boot camp. And me? I was her favorite target. Why? Because I was the last one standing. The last homeowner from the original group, the one who refused to back down. The one who dared to say, "Yes, Karen, I will barbecue in my driveway if I feel like it." But I didn't know. That day, she was about to cross a line so absurd, so personal, that it would unleash one of the wildest, most legendary acts of neighborhood rebellion this town had ever seen. She didn't just steal my pool key. She stole my peace. She stole my morning lapse, my quiet escape, my sacred routine. And so, I did what any emotionally stable, slightly unhinged, 68-year-old man with a strong sense of justice would do. I filled the pool with 10,000 piranhas. But before the chaos, before the TikToks, before HOA meetings erupted like courtroom dramas, it started with one moment. Karen, marching toward the pool like she was Queen Neptune of Ashford Pines. And 20 minutes later, when I showed up for my swim, the gate was locked. Weird. I always had the key. I was grandfathered in with full unrestricted access, a legacy privilege from the old rules, before Karen rewrote the handbook with absurd water conduct regulations. I reached into my pocket. Empty. Checked my towel bag. Nothing. Then, I saw it. Hanging on the inside of the pool fence, my key, dangling like a silver insult, hooked onto Karen's clipboard. A bright fluorescent tag dangled from it that said, "Suspended." I stood there, frozen. Margaret meowed, almost offended on my behalf. This was war. This wasn't just a key, it was mine. My peace, my ritual, my escape, and I knew exactly who was behind it. I stomped back home, but detoured 5 doors down. Karen's yard, a Stepford nightmare. Flamingos arranged by height, color-coordinated gnomes. Even her curb numbers were painted to match her HOA brochures. Sickening perfection. I rang the bell 3 times. She opened the door, wearing her favorite HOA t-shirt, that awful navy one that read, "Respect the rules, or leave the pool." Her smile was fake. Her eyes were not. "Well, hello, Elliot," she chirped, sweet as vinegar lemonade. "What can I do for you this fine morning?" "You stole my pool key, Karen." "I reclaimed it," she replied, without blinking. "You violated HOA Regulation 7B, subsection 12.3. "What?" Of course, she pulled out a laminated copy. Laminated. "No personal furniture may be left unattended in shared spaces for more than 13 minutes, she recited. "Your lounge chair, by the pool, 22 minutes, Elliot. That's almost a double violation. I laughed. One of those short, stunned, what is happening laughs. Karen, I set my chair down to use the restroom. She raised a finger. Rules are rules. No, they're not. They're weapons to you. She stared at me like I was a weed in her front yard. If you want your privileges reinstated, she said, voice sharp, you'll need to attend the next compliance hearing. A hearing? For a chair? She smiled again. More teeth this time, less warmth. We have standards here. Something in me snapped. It wasn't about the chair. It was everything. The wind chime bans, the Halloween curfews, the complaint she filed because a kid laughed too loud during summer break. Karen didn't want rules. She wanted control. Fine, I said. But just so you know, this means war. She chuckled, but there was hesitation in her voice now. Oh, Elliot, you're adorable. As I walked away, I muttered words that would echo through the neighborhood by the end of the week. Hope the fish like chlorine. She didn't get it. Not yet. But she would. Because I wasn't going to fight her with letters or hearings. I was going to fight her with chaos, with precision, with teeth. Part 2. Operation Bite Back. Begins when I got home. Gus was already waiting, 2 Diet Pepsis in hand, sitting on my porch swing like he sensed the war before I did. I sat beside him. Told him everything. The stolen key, the bogus regulation, the laminated evidence Karen shoved in my face like a courtroom prop. He cracked his can open, took a slow sip, then asked the only logical question. So, what's the plan? I didn't hesitate. I'm gonna fill the pool with piranhas. Gus paused mid-sip, then leaned back, looked at the sky, and said dead serious, well, damn, let's do it. And just like that, Operation Bite Back was born. See, Karen didn't realize she ruled by bylaws. I ruled by story. And I was about to give this town a story they'd never forget. The next morning, Gus showed up with a spiral notebook, 3 rolls of duct tape, and a grin that said he was all in. That's the thing about old friends. You tell most people, hey, I'm planning to fill the HOA pool with carnivorous fish. They laugh. Maybe call a doctor. Or the cops. But Gus? Gus brought diagrams. We sat at my kitchen table. Coffee brewing, Margaret perched on the counter like a furry little project manager, and began planning like we were launching a heist. Because in a way, we were. First step? Research. Not just fish research, although yes. We learned more about carnivorous aquatic life than any 2 retirees should. We needed intel on Karen, her schedule, when she did pool inspections. Which one of her HOA cronies walked their dog in perfect 12-minute loops just to observe people's grass? Gus called them the Karenette, and they were real. While Gus mapped out their patrol routes, I dove headfirst into the terrifying corners of the internet and discovered that red-bellied piranhas, the classic horror movie ones, were very real. Sharp teeth, bad attitude, and apparently not beginner-friendly, according to one overly passionate aquarium forum. Even better, they could survive chlorine for a few hours. Long enough to make an impression, said one post. That was all I needed to hear. Of course, I couldn't exactly walk into PetSmart and say, hi, where's your bloodthirsty nightmare aisle? So we drove 2 hours to an exotic pet shop in the middle of nowhere, owned by a guy named Reggie. Reggie smelled like shrimp and looked like he hadn't spoken to a human since 1997. His store? A fever dream? Tanks of electric eels? Lizards the size of raccoons? A tarantula named Meatball. When I asked about piranhas, Reggie's eyes lit up, like he'd been waiting his whole life for that question. We didn't buy them that day. That would have been reckless. No. This needed to be precise. We needed a plan, a drop-off schedule, and, more importantly, a secure place to hide the fish until showtime. So we asked questions: how to transport them, what to feed them, exactly how long they could last in chlorinated water without it becoming, criminal. Reggie leaned in, hands steepled, voice low like he was revealing state secrets. They'll be fine. For a few hours. Just don't swim with them. Noted, we left with 0 fish but a full battle plan. And back in Ashford Pines, things were heating up. Karen had plastered new signs all over the pool gate, laminated, of course, declaring no entry without written HOA approval in bold red letters, underlined, twice. She even posted a FAQ on the fence. Yes, a laminated FAQ. One bullet point read, no loud sunscreen application. Sunscreen. People were cracking. Linda, the sweet widow from 2 doors down, nearly cried after Karen accused her of using an unauthorized crochet hook during her knitting circle. That's when I knew. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about all of us. The silent majority of Ashford Pines, choked by the madness of one woman and her clipboard. So I started dropping hints. At the community potluck, I brought fish tacos labeled "Inspired by What's Coming." During my morning walks, I'd say things like, "Nature always finds balance," and smile cryptically. Whispers started, something was coming, something big. But Karen? Too busy measuring blade height with a ruler to notice. The final hurdle? Pool access. She had changed the lock again, a new model with a code. But Gus, God bless that man, still had a key from when he served on the HOA board back in 2004. Karen had forgotten that detail. We waited for the perfect night. Rain in the forecast. Storm clouds hiding the moonlight. No neighbors around. Under that cover, we moved. Gus kept watch at the fence while I pried open the maintenance panel. Checked the intake. Tested the temperature with a pool-safe gauge. Everything was ready. The next morning, we did a dry run. No fish. Just the gear. Testing containers. Checking for leaks. Timing our getaway route over the back fence. It felt like we were planning a casino heist, except instead of cash, we were dealing in fangs. Part 3, Piranha Day, and the chlorine gambit. Then, like fate herself was watching, Karen announced an emergency HOA pool inspection, the same day we planned to launch. I swear, it was like she knew. That night, Gus and I stood in my garage, surrounded by buckets, hoses, and one very annoyed cat glaring from atop a storage bin. We debated postponing. We really did. But then I looked at Gus, and he looked back, and we both knew. No more backing down. This wasn't just about revenge, it was resistance. We pushed the operation up by 24 hours, riskier, but doable. We called Reggie, locked in the pickup, and at dawn the next day, we had them. Dozens of sleek, toothy swimmers, packed into sealed containers that gurgled ominously in the back of Gus's truck. It was real now. We parked 2 blocks away, carried them by hand through alleys, around hedges, moving like shadows in a spy film. I could feel my heart pounding with every step. When we reached the pool gate, Gus gave one last nod, and we began. We slipped in, opened the deep-end maintenance hatch, and carefully poured the containers one by one. There was a moment of eerie silence. Then, the water stirred. Ripples danced across the surface, tiny, quick, but full of purpose. You couldn't see them clearly, but you knew they were there. I stood over the water and whispered, Swim free, my bitey little revolutionaries. Then we vanished. Pool closed. Fish in place. Stage set. Back at my house, we took our positions at the front window, like two retirees watching the greatest prank in HOA history unfold. Birds chirped, sprinklers hissed, lawns shimmered with dew. But underneath it all, something buzzed, something electric, tension, anticipation. And then she appeared. Karen, visor on, clipboard in hand, strutting toward the pool with the full confidence of a woman who once fined a toddler for sidewalk chalk. She had backup today. 2 other board members, Helen, who once wept at a meeting because someone planted sunflowers without prior approval, and Dave, the human shrug, always looked like he regretted being born into khakis. They arrived at the pool gate, eyes scanning for violations. Karen pulled out her master key like she was opening a vault. Click. Gate opened. She marched inside, followed by her minions. They surveyed the chairs, took notes, took photos, nodded approvingly. Karen approached the pool. Her steps slowed. She tilted her head, squinted at the water. Something felt off. There was no splashing, no kids, just stillness. Then a ripple, barely there, but just enough. She stepped closer, another step. Then, leaning over the edge, she peered into the water like she could feel something watching her. And that's when it happened. A single piranha breached the surface. Just for a second, teeth flashed, tail slapped, splash! Karen shrieked, so loud a bird fell out of a nearby tree. She stumbled backward, flailing her clipboard like it could fight off predators. Wildlife violation!" she screamed. Helen dropped her phone in the pool. Dave dropped his notepad and froze like a man staring into the abyss. And the neighbors? They came running, drawn by the sound, the commotion, and probably the smell of karmic justice in the air. Mr. Simmons stepped out in a robe. Mrs. Patel brought binoculars. Linda rolled up in her motorized scooter with a bowl of popcorn. It was chaos, and it was beautiful. Then, Karen did the unthinkable. She stood at the edge of the pool, raised her arms, and shouted, "As the elected head of this HOA, I command you to vacate these premises." A pause, silence. Then, another piranha leapt, right at her. It didn't bite, but it did knock her visor clean off and into the water. The crowd gasped. Someone clapped. And Karen? She looked like she'd just seen a ghost riding a shark. That was it. I couldn't hold back. I stepped onto my lawn and clapped, slowly, dramatically. The kind of clap that says, "You messed with the wrong grandpa." Karen turned. Her eyes locked onto mine like twin laser beams of fury and embarrassment. She marched toward me, dripping wet, flailing her clipboard like it was holy scripture. "You!" she shrieked. "You did this!" "Did what?" I asked, innocent as a choir boy. "Uncover the dangers of unchecked HOA power, guilty as charged. You filled the pool with man-eating monsters." "Correction," I said, smiling. "Fish. And honestly, they have better manners than some people I know." Laughter exploded. Even Dave chuckled. Karen froze, looked around, and saw it. No one feared her anymore. They were entertained, relieved, grateful. Her kingdom was crumbling. She tried to argue, shout, demand a ban on biological terrorism. But it was too late. Phones were out. Hashtags were forming. A teenager launched a drone overhead. One neighbor whispered, "This is better than Netflix." Animal control showed up eventually. They weren't mad. One officer even asked, "Are they really dangerous?" I shrugged. "Only if you're a bully in a pantsuit with a clipboard." He laughed. Gave me a fist bump. By noon, the fish were gone, safely relocated by Reggie, who now had the best story of his life. Karen? Not so lucky. Her power? Gone. Her authority? Drenched. Her visor? Claimed by justice and sharp little teeth. Part 4. The Hearing and the Fall of Queen Clipboard. The next morning, Ashford Pines was electric. You couldn't walk 5 feet without hearing the whispers. Did you see the splash? Was that real? Did he really fill the pool with fish? Lawn chairs lined up outside the pool fence like it was a historical monument. Someone even chalked a mural on the sidewalk, 3 cartoon piranhas, and the words, "They swam so we could be free." I wanted to laugh, but I was saving that for later, because 2 days after the splash heard round the block, Karen struck back. A special HOA meeting was announced, flyers taped to every door by sunrise, hand-delivered by Dave, who looked like he hadn't slept since the incident. The topic? Acts of vandalism, anarchy, and fish-based terrorism. I had to read that last part twice. She was coming for me. She was going to try spinning this entire thing into some kind of neighborhood felony. But I was ready. Oh, I was so ready. Gus and I didn't lawyer up. We did something far more powerful. We gathered stories. We collected receipts. We talked to everyone. Neighbors who were fined for unapproved Halloween cobwebs. Kids whose lemonade stands were reported as unlicensed businesses. A woman fined for putting out a garden flamingo on Memorial Day. People weren't just frustrated. They were fed up. The Piranhas? They didn't just make a splash, they broke the spell. And that night, the clubhouse was packed. Folding chairs everywhere, people standing in the back, like a courtroom drama. But the villain wore capris and a tight ponytail. Karen entered, dressed in all black, probably for her own funeral, though she didn't know it yet. She took the podium, fake smile tight as ever, and started reading a prepared statement. She talked about reckless biological activity, trauma to the community, acts of aquatic aggression. She actually used the phrase aquatic aggression. Her voice cracked once, just for a second, on the word endangered. That's when I knew. She felt it. The shift, the power slipping. When she finished, silence filled the room. Then Dave, yes, that Dave, cleared his throat and said, "We'll now open the floor to community response." And that's when Linda rolled forward, our knitting queen, on her motorized scooter, with a pie plate in her lap, and a voice like thunder. "Karen," she said, "you fined me last year for putting a pink flamingo in my garden. You called it tacky. You called my gnome collection aesthetic pollution. I didn't say a word. I stayed quiet. But now? Now you're standing here pretending to be the victim? You lost your visor, not your soul." The room erupted. Applause, cheers. Even Gus let out a "yeah" loud enough to rattle the ceiling tiles. And then, one by one, they stood. Mr. Simmons, Mrs. Patel. Even the guy with the weirdly shaped mailbox Karen tried to get banned. One after another. They spoke. It was like the town had been waiting for this moment. A public release of every wound, every passive-aggressive citation, every absurd HOA regulation ever passed under her rule. I sat quietly, sipping water, watching Karen's face melt into a blend of disbelief and rage. She had no control, not anymore. And finally, Gus stood. He didn't raise his voice, he just pointed toward me. "This man," he said, "might have brought in a few fish, but what he really brought back was our spirit. We're tired of being policed over porch lights and wind chimes. Tired of living under a rule book thicker than the Bible and twice as cruel." Elliot didn't endanger anyone. He reminded us we're neighbors, not inmates. More applause. Someone stomped their feet. Another yelled, "Amen!" Karen! Karen stood, trembling now. "This is outrageous!" she snapped. "You're all going to let one man turn this neighborhood into a zoo?" A teen in the back yelled, "Better a zoo than a dictatorship!" Boom. That was it. That was the moment. Dave, sweet, spineless Dave, finally grew a spine. He stood up, straightened his HOA polo, and looked her in the eyes. "We've taken a vote," he said. "The board has decided you're being removed as HOA president. Effective immediately." Silence. Karen blinked. Once, twice. Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again, like a fish, ironic. "You can't do that," she barked. Dave replied, calm and clear. "We just did." She turned to the crowd, looking for backup. All she saw were folded arms, raised brows, and a few phones, still recording. She stormed out without another word. The door slammed behind her with the finality of a courtroom gavel. And the room exploded. People cheered, laughed, some hugged. And me? I sat there, smiling quietly, knowing that, for the first time in years, Ashford Pines was free. Part 5, Freedom, and one last envelope. The air felt different the next morning. Not tense, not heavy, just quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after a storm, when the sky finally exhales. No laminated warnings taped to doors, no passive-aggressive notes about mailbox height, no surprise inspections of flower beds, just bird song and peace. I stepped outside, barefoot, cup of coffee in hand. Margaret followed, tail high in the air, like she could sense the world had shifted. And it had. The HOA was no longer a regime. It was a community. The bulletin board outside the clubhouse, no longer a wall of printed bylaws. Now it held hand-drawn flyers. Someone wrote, "Pool Party Friday, Bio Fun," in bright chalk letters. And right in the center, a photo. Someone had printed a still shot from the infamous video. The exact moment Karen got splashed in the face by a flying piranha. Her visor midair, her mouth wide open. Underneath it, in red marker, "Never forget." The story went viral faster than we expected. A local news crew came to film a segment. They tried interviewing Karen. She slammed the door in their face. The clip still aired. TikToks popped up everywhere. Reaction videos, remixes, even a trap beat built around her shriek. One day, a teenager at the grocery store stopped me. "Yo, are you the fish guy?" I smiled. "Prefer local legend. But yeah, that's me." 3 days later, the pool reopened. Piranha-free, cleaned, joyful. Kids ran through the sprinklers. Someone brought a speaker blasting 80s hits. Gus wore his flamingo swim trunks, the same ones Karen once banned under fashion violations. Now, they were basically the neighborhood uniform. I stretched out on my lounge chair, placed deliberately crooked, just because I could. Neighbors passed by, some nodded, some thanked me, no big speeches, just quiet, grateful glances, the kind that say, "You did something good." Later that night, Gus and I sat on my porch again, like we always did, sodas in hand. The sun dipped behind the rooftops, painting the sky in soft orange and pink. He took a sip, then asked, "You think the peace'll last?" I looked at the calm streets, the open windows, the distant laughter from the pool. "Maybe not forever, but long enough to matter." He nodded slowly. "You know," he said, "when you first said piranhas, I thought you were losing it." I laughed. I was. Just not the way you thought. We both chuckled, one of those warm, chest-deep laughs that feel like home. And just as I stood to head inside, I saw it. A small envelope, sitting on my doormat. No stamp, no return address. just my name, written in sharp, tight cursive. I picked it up, felt the weight of it. Inside was a single page, typed. It read, "To Mr. Hoa, I hope you're pleased with yourself. You may have turned the neighborhood against me, but you haven't won. I've taken the liberty of founding a new HOA in a new neighborhood, one free of flamingo shorts and ridiculous aquatic stunts. It's called Serenity Glen, and it will be everything Ashford Pines was supposed to be. P.S. Visors are mandatory. Sincerely, Karen." I stared at it, and then burst out laughing. Gus raised an eyebrow. I handed him the letter. He read it silently, then snorted. "She really started another HOA?" "Yep." "Serenity Glen?" "Sounds like a cult," I said, "and visors are mandatory." We laughed so hard, Margaret leapt off the porch. I folded the letter, stuck it back in the envelope, and wrote in big red ink, "Return to sender." Maybe someone at Serenity Glen would find it one day and realize what kind of storm they'd just let in. In the days that followed, the neighborhood bloomed. Porch concerts, sidewalk scavenger hunts. Someone put googly eyes on every street sign, just because they could. And not once did anyone get fined. One afternoon, there was a knock on my door. It was Helen, holding a pie, lemon meringue. By the looks of it, she looked nervous. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry," she said, "for going along with it all, for thinking that's how neighborhoods had to be." I took the pie, gave her a nod. "They don't." She smiled, really smiled. "Thank you for reminding us." After she left, I sat down at the kitchen table, Margaret on my lap, pie on my plate, peace in my chest. I looked around at my crooked chair, my quiet home, my community reborn. And I thought, I didn't just get my pool key back. I got my neighborhood back, my mornings, my freedom. And maybe, just maybe, I proved that even at 68, you're never too old to make waves. And as for Karen, well, may the fish gods have mercy on Serenity Glen, because I sure won't.